My beloved child, stop scrolling. Not because the world has suddenly become quieter, but because something has been trying to reach you through all the noise, and this moment is the first time you have allowed your heart to become still enough to hear it. You may think you found these words by accident, but heaven has never relied on accidents. There are moments written long before your first breath when truth and timing finally embrace each other. This is one of them. You have carried questions that no one around you could answer. Some of those questions have never even escaped your lips because you feared what the answers might demand of you. Yet I have heard every silent conversation inside your soul. I have watched you smile while hiding confusion, comfort others while quietly wondering why your own heart felt so heavy. I have seen every night you stared into darkness hoping tomorrow would finally explain what yesterday refused to reveal. Listen carefully. What you are about to hear was never meant for everyone. It was meant for the one whose spirit has been standing at the edge of understanding, sensing that something beneath the surface of ordinary life has been shifting. That one is you. There is a family whose story is about to become impossible to ignore. To those watching from the outside, they appeared ordinary. Their photographs captured laughter. Their celebrations looked complete. Their neighbors admired the smiles, the traditions, the birthdays, the holiday dinners where everyone gathered around one table pretending love had erased every wound. But heaven watched something different. Behind every smile rested an unanswered question. Behind every embrace lingered an invisible distance. Behind every promise sat a secret that time itself had grown tired of protecting. The day had finally come. A small room. Bright lights, cold chairs, quiet breathing, one sealed envelope. It rested on a polished table with such ordinary simplicity that no one could imagine it possessed the power to rearrange generations. The paper weighed almost nothing. The truth inside it carried the weight of decades. The family believed they had gathered to settle one argument. They did not know they had gathered to awaken an entire bloodline. One by one they entered. The grandfather, whose hands had built houses but never managed to rebuild the trust inside his own home. The grandmother, whose prayers had become quieter over the years because disappointment had convinced her heaven was no longer listening. The eldest son, carrying confidence so carefully rehearsed that no one noticed how fragile it truly was. The youngest daughter, whose eyes had always searched every room as if expecting someone to finally explain why she never felt she completely belonged. Parents, children, uncles, aunts, voices, memories. Every heartbeat echoed with anticipation they could not explain. None of them realized I had already arrived before the first chair was pulled away from the table. I was there, not because I wished to expose them, because truth cannot heal what lies continue to imprison. You see, my beloved child, there comes a season when mercy no longer looks like silence. Sometimes mercy sounds like revelation. There are answers you beg me to reveal. There are others you beg me to hide without realizing it. But my wisdom has never depended on human comfort. It depends upon eternal purpose. That family believed they were waiting for laboratory results. Heaven knew they were standing at the entrance of destiny. The envelope remained unopened for several long moments. No one spoke. The silence became so loud that even breathing sounded like interruption. Have you ever noticed how your soul recognizes important moments before your mind understands them? That is why your chest sometimes grows heavy before life changes. That is why tears sometimes appear before your eyes discover their reason. Your spirit remembers what your memory has forgotten. The youngest daughter kept glancing toward the envelope. She couldn't explain why. Since childhood she had sensed invisible walls inside the family. Questions always disappeared whenever she entered the room. Conversations changed, eyes shifted. Smiles arrived too quickly. She learned very young that silence can become a language all its own. Still, she loved them, or perhaps she loved the version of them she hoped truly existed beneath all the pretending. Across the table, her older brother folded his arms. He laughed once, not because anything was funny, because fear often disguises itself as confidence. Their mother whispered that everything would be fine. Yet even as those words left her mouth, they carried no peace. Because lies borrow the vocabulary of hope while stealing its certainty, the father stared at the floor. He had spent years convincing himself that buried things stay buried forever. He forgot something. Truth does not decay, it waits, patiently, quietly, relentlessly, until the appointed hour arrives. And when that hour comes, not even generations of silence can keep it hidden. Perhaps this reminds you of your own life. Perhaps there are conversations your family refuses to have. Perhaps there are names never mentioned. Photographs never displayed, letters never opened, questions answered with distractions instead of honesty. Do not think heaven is unaware. Nothing hidden escapes my sight. Nothing forgotten disappears from my memory. Even now, as you hear these words, your heart may be remembering moments you dismissed years ago. A strange look, a sentence interrupted, a relative who avoided your eyes, a feeling that never quite left. You thought it meant nothing. But sometimes the smallest memory becomes the first thread leading toward the greatest revelation. The room grew colder. Or perhaps it only felt colder because truth has a way of removing the warmth false certainty provides. The official cleared his throat, such an ordinary sound, yet every soul inside that room felt history inhale. Outside, cars continued passing, birds continued singing, children continued laughing somewhere beyond those walls. The world remained unchanged, but inside that room, time itself seemed unwilling to move forward until the next sentence was spoken. My beloved child. There are moments when all of heaven watches humanity hold its breath. Not because I do not know what will happen, but because I know what people will become after they finally know the truth. Those moments reshape identities. They dismantle masks. They expose wounds. They also create miracles impossible before honesty arrives. Remember that, because you have prayed for healing while unknowingly protecting the very secrets preventing it. Healing and hiding cannot live together forever. One eventually forces the other to leave. The official reached toward the envelope. His fingers hesitated. He had performed this task hundreds of times. Normally it was routine. Today something unsettled him. He couldn't explain why. He simply felt observed. Not by cameras, not by people, by eternity. He opened the seal. The soft tearing sound echoed louder than thunder inside every heart present. Pages slid onto the table, numbers, names, sequences, scientific language, clinical certainty, yet heaven smiled. Because humanity often believes truth belongs only to science, forgetting that every genuine discovery merely uncovers what I have always known, the grandfather adjusted his glasses, his hands trembled, not from age alone, from memory, old memories, dangerous memories, memories he had buried beneath decades of responsibility and routine. He thought no one noticed, but the granddaughter did. She always noticed. Since childhood she possessed an unusual sensitivity. People called her emotional, too observant, too quiet, too intense. What they failed to understand was that some souls detect fractures long before buildings collapse. She carried questions no one encouraged her to ask. So she carried them alone, year after year, until they became heavier than certainty itself. The official looked around the room before speaking. Every eye remained fixed upon him, every heartbeat leaned forward. Even those pretending not to care found themselves silently praying. It is remarkable how quickly certainty disappears when truth finally approaches. You may spend years insisting nothing can surprise you. Then one moment arrives. One sentence, one revelation, one name. And suddenly everything you believed about yourself begins to tremble. This is why pride fears truth. Humility welcomes it. The mother reached for her husband's hand. He did not notice. He remained staring at the table as though refusing eye contact might somehow postpone reality. My beloved child, how often have you done the same? How often have you avoided conversations because deep inside you sensed they would change everything? Avoidance feels powerful only until destiny arrives. Then it becomes powerless, for destiny never asks permission from denial. The youngest daughter closed her eyes. She whispered something under her breath, not because she fully believed. Because desperation sometimes becomes the doorway faith quietly enters. I heard every word. Even though she could not finish, especially those, you think prayers require polished language. They do not. The prayers that reach me fastest often arrive broken, half sentences, silent tears. Unfinished thoughts, shaking breaths. I understand every one of them. The official finally began reading, names first, dates, reference numbers, technical details. Every sentence felt painfully slow. Impatience spread through the room like invisible fire. Several family members exchanged nervous glances. One uncle checked his watch. Another crossed his legs repeatedly. Someone coughed. Someone sighed. Someone silently wished they had never agreed to come, yet none of them left, because even fear understands when the moment of truth has finally arrived. Outside the window clouds slowly gathered. Sunlight faded behind them. Shadows stretched across the room. The daughter noticed first. She looked upward. For one brief instant she felt something impossible to describe. Not dread, not peace, expectation. As though unseen eyes watched with profound compassion. She could not know I was already surrounding her with strength she would soon desperately need. For some truths break people, others awaken them. The difference often depends upon whether they recognize my presence within the revelation. The official paused again. His expression changed. confusion, then surprise, then disbelief. He reread one line, then another. Silence swallowed the room. The grandfather leaned forward. "What is it?" he asked. No answer. The official simply continued reading silently. His breathing became slower, his face lost color. The family exchanged frightened looks. No one understood why a trained professional suddenly appeared unable to continue, yet heaven understood, because even those accustomed to facts sometimes find themselves overwhelmed when facts uncover something far greater than expected. My beloved child, there are revelations that answer one question. Then there are revelations that create 100 new ones. This was the second kind. The official lifted his eyes. Every person waited. The room felt suspended between two versions of reality. One would survive. The other was already disappearing. The daughter instinctively reached toward the family photograph resting inside her purse. She carried it everywhere: birthdays, vacations, Christmas mornings, smiling faces frozen in happier times. She looked at it now. Something felt different. The smiles had not changed, but her understanding had begun to. Isn't that how truth works? It does not rewrite the past. It changes the meaning of everything you thought you already understood. Suddenly the grandmother began crying. No one had spoken. Nothing had been revealed aloud, yet tears streamed down her face as though she recognized footsteps of a memory approaching from very far away. She whispered only one sentence. "I knew this day would come." Everyone turned toward her. The room froze. The grandfather looked at her with fear he had hidden for almost 40 years. The father stood halfway from his chair before sitting back down. The older brother frowned. The daughter stared in complete confusion. No one asked what she meant, because somehow, deep inside, every soul already feared they knew. The official swallowed hard. He looked once more at the paper, then slowly raised his voice. "My responsibility." He stopped. His hands shook. He tried again. "My responsibility is simply to read the verified results exactly as recorded." No one breathed, not fully. The walls themselves seemed to listen. Even time appeared unwilling to interrupt. And just before the first impossible sentence left his lips, the grandfather suddenly stood up and whispered words that shattered the silence before the DNA results could even be spoken. "No, if those names are there, then heaven has finally remembered what we tried to make the world forget."